Thank you. Good. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Vikas GUPTA. I'm the CEO and president of TransGaming. And welcome to today's talk. And I think the introduction was well merited. I think we're going through a very interesting industry transformation, and we're seeing more and more devices of all sorts start to become pervasive in the market. And I think as with the typical cycles that we've seen historically, there's an uphill battle to getting mass-scale adoption while different companies are trying to figure out monetization schemes and the right kind of experiences. And in the meantime, companies are working hard, raising capital, not making money until you hit that critical mass. So we'll explore a little bit of that today around smart TVs. And I think the topic is very apt in that the term smart TV has been around now for about 2.5 to 3 years. More and more people from a mainstream audience perspective understand the term, but the reality is that smart TV is more like above average TV. In my books, it's more like satisfactory TV. I think we still have a ways to go before we get there. Before I jump into the details, how many people here actually have a smart TV? It's a few of you. And how many people have played games on their smart TV? Wow, only like 3. And how many of you 3 have really enjoyed the smart TV gaming experience? So 1.5. And I think that really demonstrates the point of what kinds of problems we're experiencing today. So we'll get into this and we'll have some fun with it as well. Quick background on TransGaming first before I jump into the details. The company was originally founded on the ability to bring PC games over to both Linux as well as Mac. We have a proprietary technology that allows us to literally wrap a PC binary, drop it down onto the Mac, and the game runs. We work with some of the largest game developers and publishers in the world, ranging from Take-Two, Disney, Electronic Arts, Activision, Ubisoft, and the list goes on. And we worked on some of the biggest properties on the planet as well. So we've brought games like FIFA 12, EVE Online, Grand Theft Auto, Spore, Sims, etc., Spyro Skylanders. And so one of the biggest powers to our technology is that we allow simultaneous day-and-date releases. We don't have to maintain multiple code bases. And as those games are getting updated on a regular basis, we don't need to worry about constantly going in and making code changes. Our technology is actually able to absorb all that. So as Apple obviously continues to do well with the Mac, and more users come to the Mac and start to play games, that business is growing pretty nicely. About 2 years ago, we actually decided that smart TV was a great emerging trend. And we've always been sort of into emerging businesses. And we looked at this, we looked at our expertise, and we created a product called GameTree TV. And GameTree TV is our premier on-demand interactive entertainment platform for smart TV. And I'll talk more about that afterwards. But there's a really big push for us as a company into that industry sector. We've invested millions building out a team, building out a platform. We've now commercialized all over the world with a whole variety of different service providers. We're now moving into the TV space as well. We also acquired Oberon Media's ITV division back in January to really start to accelerate some of the adoption and the penetration that we were having in the industry, as well as to gain access to some pretty marquee licenses. Now, when I think about the television experience, historically, the television has always been about a social experience. People gather and congregate in the living room since the television was invented, and that's never changed. And even to this day, people get together in the living room. More and more, as we start to watch reality shows and game shows and so on, the interaction is starting to get a little bit better. If you're an American Idol fan, you call in afterwards and you vote. So we're starting to see that tip of basic interactivity, but we're still not there yet. But I think part of the dilemma we're experiencing is that we've forgotten that television is about a social experience. It's about entertainment, it's about engagement. And while that engagement has up until now been based on linear media, and we're now moving to interactive media, a lot of the TV makers, as well as the service providers, have really forgotten the crux of what the living room environment has always been about. And you look at the stats, 38 hours per week are still spent watching television. So more time in the living room and by consumer consumption of media goes to television viewing than anything else. And that's staggering. 106 million people watch the Super Bowl together. And I think that when you look at the stats for American Idol or all these other shows that are coming out, those numbers are actually almost scary in terms of how much time people are spending in front of the TV. So when we think about that level of consumption, we also need to think about how things are changing and how that experience evolves. Now, with the advent of smart TV, we are living the best of times and the worst of times. The best of times are pretty, are pretty obvious. I think that the living room gaming experience is very much in vogue these days. Everyone's talking about it. To some extent, the same way that we experienced the whole craze with Facebook, or when smartphones came out, everyone jumped on that bandwagon. We're starting to see the same kind of proliferation happen today. And I think that's a very exciting thing. The television also opens up a whole variety of integrated entertainment possibilities. So you've got multi-screen capabilities, you've got contextual discovery, you've got the ability to leverage television shows into games. And I think that opens up a whole world of new types of entertainment. And then at the same time, you've got TV makers essentially talking about the fact that 150 million connected TVs will be shipped per year by the year 2016. Now, when we talk about connected TV or smart TV, I should define the term. Smart TV doesn't necessarily mean that the smartness is in the TV itself. That smartness can be in the television, it can be in the set-top box, or it can be in some other connected device, like a Roku box or a Boxee or some other OTT-based device. So I think we're seeing some very interesting trends. We're seeing the mass market adoption of this starting to happen. The worst of times, however, is where I'm going to spend the next few slides. Has smart TV really made the grade today? And the fact of the matter is that smart TV, while it's coming in a big, big way, has a long, long ways to go. And so I'm the teacher, and this is my report card for smart TV, and I've actually been a little generous. The reality is that the television experiences today are satisfactory at best. The experiences are actually really poor. There are a whole variety of apps that don't make sense, and they're not really designed for TV. Some experiences are easy to use, other interfaces are horrible. And I think that a lot of TV makers are thinking about this from the perspective that, hey, on your set-top box, depending on sort of the kind of operator you're on, you've got a pretty kludgy 2D-based environment. So anything that we do is going to be better. But I think that setting the bar that low is not a good thing when we think about evolution. So some of the problems associated with smart TV are pretty basic. Number one, and we've heard this throughout Casual Connect, the world does not need another goddamn app store. We have got way too many app stores, and the reality is that only a company like Apple can create an app store and make it successful. Everybody else is playing the copycat game. So we've got service provider after service provider, TV maker after TV maker, over-the-top device maker after OTT maker, all creating their own app stores. And what's a consumer going to do? I mean, how many times can you really buy Angry Birds on every single device you have? And it's getting to the point where it's almost ridiculous because now we're experiencing these really bad ports across all the different devices that are out there. And consumers simply can't make a decision of, do we focus on the set-top box? Do we focus on the TV? Do we play that same content on our iPad or our PC or somewhere else? And it's becoming a big problem. It's compounded by the fact that when you think about Apple as an App Store developer, Apple knows hardware, Apple knows software. They know how to create a developer relations program. They know how to create a software ecosystem. They know how to support that development community. A TV maker that is primarily a hardware maker does not know how to do that. Neither does a service provider. So I can't imagine that Comcast knows how to do developer relations the right way. And I can't imagine that all of a sudden some application is going to make its way into a set-top box, and every so often that application will crash and have to reboot your box. And that's unheard of in the living room. So I think we're getting into a lot of these kinds of issues that have yet to be thought out, but there's such a race to just get content into the hands of the consumer without thinking about it that we're starting to experience this app store nightmare. We have to think about TV as a dramatically distinct experience. The television is not a glorified PC monitor. The television is not an oversized iPad, and the television is a very different type of experience. The television is about entertainment in a 10-foot kickback experience. It's not about a 10-inch lean-forward experience, and it's not about a singular experience. So back to one of my original slides. Television is about congregating people together and socially engaging them. And yet we're seeing more and more apps and games and a variety of those kinds of environments making their way to TV without really thinking about the consumer in mind. And that's going to start to lead to big, big problems. The other issue that we get into is that the television environment right now is the Wild West. we've got all the different TV makers doing their own thing. Everybody's using a different set of technology. So you've got Flash, you've got HTML5, you've got JavaScript, you've got proprietary environments. On the set-top box with the service providers, you've got all sorts of these weird middleware environments. You've got different chipsets, different operating systems, and there's absolutely no standardization. So if you're going to try and support this in a big, big way, how do you? You can't make your content ubiquitous. And that's why a lot of people are just doing port after port after port. Let's take the content we've developed and let's try and monetize it every which way we can. And the fact is that there are TV makers who are now finally starting to confess that after 2 years of investing heavily in the app market, they're not making any money at all. And this is a big, big, big issue. The other problem is that the TV makers are still thinking about television as hardware. So the lower the bill of materials, the better. So you've got these really low-end processors, you've got no local storage, you've got maybe 4 gigs of flash ROM, of which a developer has access to maybe 500 megs at a time. That's not conducive to game development. And then with TV makers, you get into the other problem of every television has got its own unique environment. And the next year, when they come out with the 2013 versions, it changes all over again. There's no continuity. So we get into a lot of issues that have yet to be explored and thought about, and I think that in 3 years, these guys are going to find themselves in massive trouble. So now, if I take a step back and I think about what works, well, first of all, social engagement, I think, in the television environment is really important. You need to engage audiences. And in this case, it's audiences with a plural. This is not a singular experience. So I'm going to give you the good old-fashioned example of what we do with Dish Networks. And this is classic social engagement, not in a Facebook way, but social the way it used to be regarded as social. So we've got a game called Hunting Trails that we developed specifically for the gaming solution that we have up on Dish. And what we do in order to get the stickiness with audiences and to really differentiate the experience is that every month we've got a whole series of tournaments and competitions and so on. This takes me back to the arcade days because every month what ends up happening, it's a simple hunting game. You've got these hardcore players who are just shooting up animals like galore, and they need to have the high score. And so at the end of the month, as the competition or the tournament is coming close to an end, if their name has dropped from the first place to second or third or fourth, these guys are back in there and they're playing day and night to make sure that they've got the highest score. At the end of the month, we do some really cool things. If you're the first prize winner, you can choose what your prize is going to be. The number of people that want a deer head or a buck head is phenomenal. This is a real deer head or a buck head. So we're shipping this stuff all across the US to Dish customers, and they want to hang this massive buck head on their living room wall above their television. There's other people who want Omaha steaks and other types of meat. We'll ship them venison and boar, deer, whatever. And in other cases, third, fourth prize winners, there's a whole bunch of Walmart cards and other types of giveaways. This is social the good old-fashioned way. And the amazing thing is the traction that we're getting from consumers is out of this world. I mean, it's phenomenal because people are really attracted and drawn to that experiences. And the stories that we've heard when we talk to people, we talk to the customer service rep in their environments, is that this is a congregation. A bunch of guys will get together in the living room, they'll take turns playing, they'll battle each other, and they want to be that buckhead, deerhead winner at the end of the month. So we've thought about this from the ground up in a very different way. And because this is still on a legacy platform, we can't integrate social the way social is regarded today. So we've done it very differently, and it is working phenomenally, phenomenally well for us. So it goes to show that as much as there's a lot of technology, you can go back to the basics and still do some really, really cool things, also with a basic 2D game. Now you fast forward a little bit. One of the things that we're working on right now is a poker game based on the World Poker Tour franchise. The World Poker Tour folks have been phenomenal to work with. And what we're doing is we're creating a gaming experience on the television that's going to make you feel like you're actually sitting in a real World Poker Tour tournament somewhere in a casino around the world. We're using the same kind of opening scene. We're using exactly the same set design. We're using the announcers' voices as the voiceover. And the look and the feel is identical to what you'd be watching in terms of a WPT experience on television. The other thing that we're doing is we're really taking into consideration how people interact today. So 78% of American households typically have at least one other handheld device while they're watching television. So with respect to our poker experience, the big screen is essentially the poker table. And as individuals are sort of playing, you can see the close-up on that individual. On the left side of the screen, you can see what else is going on, who's got sort of what event's happening. This is now the individual screen that different players are playing with. So in that case, what happens is that you're holding your cards on your iPhone or your iPad or your Android device. If you're dealing, you're going to flick over your finger on the screen. If you're going all in, you can push your chips in. All that shows up in real time. Now, when we talk about multi-screen, we mean multi-screen. So this is not about a second screen experience. We can get a bunch of people together in the same living room playing that game. Where we take it one step further is that those same people can go off into their own respective living rooms and then still continue to play, as if they were side by side next to each other. Still get that kind of gameplay experience. And as we start to move forward with WPT, we're looking at much, much more integration. And how do we take the real life community and be able to do things that allow them to almost feel like they have a real WPT experience. So we're thinking about things like, you know, if you're the winner of a tournament that we're doing, we'll fly you to the WPT tournament that's happening in whatever region close to you. So if you're playing in France and the next tournament is in Monaco a month later, the top prize winner will fly you out to Monaco and actually give you the WPT experience in real life. So we're starting to think about this level of engagement in completely new and different ways. And so you can see the contrast between what I described earlier versus this, but they're not really unique though, right? They all go well together, and there's an entertainment factor that really resonates with the consumer audience. Now, one of the key things to keep in mind is that smart TV is new, and I think that while it's great that the TV makers are jumping into games head first, they do need to think about it, and we have a ways to go. In the case of the service providers, they're taking a little bit more of a wait-and-see attitude, and I think that is a big mistake. I think that a service provider is in a position to really dictate how all of this moves forward and set that standard, yet they're not doing it. Now, we all know that Facebook gaming is huge, and we all know that gaming on iPad and iPhone is huge. But it wasn't until iOS 3, I believe, that Game Center came out, and when Steve Jobs finally adopted that in a big way. Now, keep in mind, we've been doing work with Apple for a long, long time. Steve Jobs showed off Harry Potter, EA's Harry Potter, running on the Mac at WWDC years ago. But he showed it off pretty reluctantly because he was never a gamer and didn't believe in games as a real form of interactive media and entertainment. However, even Steve Jobs eventually came around and adopted it in a big way, and you look at what they've been able to do. It was years and years before Facebook started backing games in a big way. But now you look at where companies like Zynga and many, many others are as a result of that level of support. So I think service providers have got exactly the same kind of opportunity ahead of them. If they don't move quickly, and if they don't start to set the stage for what the standards need to look like, they are going to risk losing control of the living room. And I think that risk is very real today, given how much of the focus is on the living room. Now, I think the other thing that's happening is that this industry, this sector, meaning television, it's changing, but it's not evolving. So when I talked about the Wild West, you can see that divergence that's going on and just how crazy this environment is. So what we need to do is we need a company like Apple to, in fact, come along, dictate what that experience is, and then align everybody behind them. And it will take a company like Apple. So I get asked all the time, are we excited or paranoid about the fact that Apple may or may not come out with their own television? And I think it's great, because I think that the craziness and the Wild West that's going on in the television market today, that will start to diminish and disappear because everyone will rally around one particular standard that somebody has now defined. And you think back to the smartphone or even pre-smartphone, how many different phones there were, and how many different operating systems and form factors and so on. Apple came along and all of that went away, and now we've got one set of standards. People are aligned around that, and gaming has really progressed further because we've been able to develop games in much more of a ubiquitous fashion. So I think that's one of the keys that's going to really help propagate this forward in a big, big way. So I think the final takeaways really are that you have to think about TV gaming from the ground up. This is not a PC experience that you can port over. The television is not a glorified desktop. It's not a glorified iPad. It is a television. It's about entertainment, and it's about people coming together in front of this big screen. We don't need another app store. I think that whether you're a service provider or whether you're a TV maker, you have to rethink the strategy of app stores. And so while we've got hundreds of channels on TV, I just don't think that's viable to be able to navigate through hundreds of thousands of apps on the television. When I sit down in my living room in front of my TV, I turn it on, and I expect to be entertained instantly. And I know what shows I'm going to watch, etc. I'm not sitting there for hours searching and searching and searching through all the different content, and then ultimately going to bed because I've now spent 2 hours trying to find something and didn't succeed at that. The other thing is that TV is about entertainment. So let's develop games and let's develop content that really cater to that. And let's ensure that we're delivering experiences that align with what people expect. So I think it's great to have Angry Birds on your TV, but I've already played it on my PC, on my Mac, on my iPhone, on my iPad. So I don't know that we're going to get a lot of traction with that kind of app still making its way to the television. We need to engage the user in a completely different way. Monetization is also going to be very different. I think the same way that freemium made a big, big play years ago, we're going to start to see freemium, much more subscription coming back, and other types of monetization in front of the television. And then finally, I think what encapsulates all this is we've got to create platform-defining experiences to some extent like what I've described, and hopefully what we're going to be doing as well with games like World Poker Tour. Really think about the television as an experiential environment and give consumers the ability to do something that they won't do or can't do anywhere else, and enjoy that experience and have a great, great time with it. And I think with those elements in mind, I think that starts to shape the future of TV and really start to build what I believe could be the next big, big, exciting platform. So with that, thank you very much. I think we've got a few minutes to take questions, and that's my contact information up there as well.
We do have a few minutes. I want to kick off with a question. I'd like your take on the purchase of Gaikai by Sony just after they announced that they were going to provide all the games for Samsung.
So, I spoke with David Perry just this past Monday, and first of all, congratulations to Gaikai. I think they've done a great job, and I think it's a great acquisition for them. The deals that they've done with LG and Samsung, I'm not in a position to comment what's going to happen, but I personally, and this is me talking only, I can't see that deal continuing. I mean, you've got LG and Samsung as massive consumer electronic companies. Sony as a massive consumer electronic company, I am doubtful they're going to share that technology. So I did speak with LG, and I'm sure even Samsung is going through a panic attack right now of what's going to happen. So right now it's a wait and see. Once the deal closes and the integration starts to begin, then we'll have a much better idea, but I can't see that deal actually continuing and getting assigned over. Now for Sony, they've got their own reasons for why they did the acquisition. I think that there are some very interesting things happening with that next-gen console cycle. I think for Sony, it's more about a console and handheld device play than it is about a TV play for now, but let's see.
It's kind of interesting. You might take Gaikai out of the TV business and back into the console business. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to ask the same question. You mentioned set-top boxes as being part of your connected experience with that next possible console transition that's coming out there, whether it's Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft. You don't see one of them driving that forward rather than Apple?
No, I don't. The console experience is still about gaming first and foremost. And the living room experience is not necessarily about gaming. It's about broader entertainment, linear as well as interactive. As much as I'm the CEO of a gaming company, I don't have a console at home. My wife won't allow it. So she's not into, let's play Call of Duty and this and that. I think that if you're a gamer, you're overserved and a console is great. However, what we've seen in the last few years is that the mainstream audiences are still embracing games in a big, big way. When I give talks in different audiences, I'll often ask the question, how many people here are gamers? And very few people put up their hand. The next question is, how many people here play games on any device? And pretty much everyone's hand goes up. And right there, you can see how people actually distinguish themselves based on a label. So I think that the set-top box has massive opportunity. For us, it's exciting because it's the lowest common denominator. If you're going to watch TV, you need to have a set-top box in your home.
So I was wondering, isn't that akin to having to wire a cell phone into your car because you want to make phone calls while driving? It seems to me that, you mentioned already that you've got this TV, everyone already has one.
Sure.
Right? And then in a lot of homes, there's a whole host of computing power on everyone's lap.
Yep.
Does it really make sense to keep trying to put a game-capable piece of hardware into the TV? You've got these systems where you can throw what you've got on your powerful laptop, whatever's in your lap, whether it's a phone or a tablet or whatever.
Yep.
You throw that on the screen, multiple people, it's all connected, it's all, why do you think the future is all these special hardware rather than just a TV that goes, you know what, I'll stream from your Android device on your lap?
Yeah, no, listen, I think that's a great question. So I'm going to answer that in a couple of different ways. First, I'll talk about consoles, even though you haven't included that. The typical console is in a secondary room. It's not in front of the main television. It's in a den, it's in a basement, it's in a bedroom. The living room is still reserved for a very select few number of devices. Now, when you're playing on an iPad or an Android device, et cetera, right now it's still very much a singular experience. As much as we're hearing about streaming technology and WiDi and so on, and I think a lot of the stuff will become easier and easier to use, the reality is that there are very few people who still know how to do that. And all you're doing then is you're mirroring a 9-inch, 10-inch experience onto a big screen. That experience is not about that big screen experience. That experience is still about that iPad. So I'll give you one example. Here's a backup slide that I have. We've got rights to Hasbro. I've got a 5-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old daughter. My 7-year-old is very meticulous. She loves Monopoly. If we say, what do you want to do? What do you want to play? She wants to play Monopoly. She'll go running up to her bedroom because she's very particular about Monopoly. She'll bring it down, set it up, and everyone's playing Monopoly. My 5-year-old is crumpling up the money, tossing pieces everywhere, and driving my daughter insane. And so for me, the opportunity to do a Friday night family board game night, I think is great. Because now we can all gather around the big screen TV. And we can all play. There's no mess. There's no fighting about money getting ripped up or wrinkled or anything else. It's all on the television. We can integrate that with handheld devices, or we can do it just on the big screen TV. But again, it goes back to what I said before. It's about an interactive, socially engaging experience, not a singular experience. We could probably play Monopoly in a similar fashion where we just hand the iPad around, but it's my 5-year-old who's got a 30-second attention span. She's gone, waiting for her turn. And that's the difference, right? And that's why I have to stress that this is not about taking the iPad experience and throwing it up on the big screen. This is about very individualized, custom experiences.
So obviously there's some good discussion to be had and lots of different directions and challenges to explore. Unfortunately, we have only 30 minutes for your talk. So thank you very much, Vikas.
Great, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
I'd like to mention that we have a 30-minute